Three, two, one, let's go!
Let's go!
Yeah, ErdosMiller. I can't thank you guys enough. My name is Troy Tittlemeyer, the host of the Permian Basin Experience podcast, and we have just gone through an amazing show with Ken Miller, the CEO and founder of ErdosMiller, and Zachary Gaston. Zach is electronics engineer with a passion for custom electronic devices. He loves a good challenge that forces him to learn and use innovative technology to push clients' designs out in front of their competitors. And Zach, thank you so much for joining the show, man.
Hey, man, thank you for having me.
Before we get to Ken's introduction, what struck you about the show? What did you like from the overall show?
What I like is that we have actually enough time to really drill down into a subject. We also have a podcast, but our episodes are focused more on maybe 10, 15-minute segments. And I think it was interesting this time around to kind of get really detailed into a subject, not just the surface, but really, really drilling down into it.
Yeah, totally agree with that, man. Learned so much about ErdosMiller, specifically Ken Miller, CEO and founder. Ken began his career in automotive microcontroller development. Incredibly smart, as you guys will all quickly realize as we get through this show, but quickly found himself in a niche in the oil and gas field, downhole tool design. Ken's passion is for technology and finding new ways to solve old problems. I absolutely love that. He can quickly understand a new challenge and provide a leadership to deliver the best technical and business solutions to customers' needs. Without question, throughout this show, Ken, I am just absolutely a fan of you. And I think there's something to be said as we listen to Zach explain it. And I think it goes for the whole company. It's this unspoken reality that you are a true leader and you have this vision for the company and you have this ability to find value and find the people that can contribute to that value through technology and apply it immediately, not in the future, but now. What is the need? Where is it going? How can you guys do this and help and get the operators what they need? I think, dude, you should have like your own website. I don't know. You should be like blogging your life. It was very inspirational, Ken. I'm honored to share the microphones with you.
I feel the same way. I learned a lot today, and it was a ton of fun.
Right on, Ken. And so what was that? So as we dove in and really listened to you explain the history of MWD and all that we really dove into, what was one takeaway for you out of this?
I mean, you're coming from the geologist perspective. That's an area that I'm learning a lot about. You're forcing me to think in terms of the challenges that they face on day to day. You know, we've been so focused with providing measurements. It was great to learn about kind of some of the fluid challenges on the completion side and other things that aren't the normal problem sets that we're faced with on a day to day basis. It always helps to be as exposed to things as possible. There's no limit to the capacity for your brain to absorb information and then find unique ways to combine it, with whatever you're working on at the time.
Well said, man. It was, and likewise for us. I think we're going to benefit just as much, if not more, from listening to your experience and what you understand with these tools and the development of this stuff, the challenges, the limitations, and where potentially the future lies. From there, let's talk about reality just for a minute before we take off. I mean, we are living through an absolute wild time, and we can't take away the fact that we are all strapped to our own homes and our offices now at home, and we're the dynamic of working through the servers and through email and not having that in-person live energy. What are the challenges, or what are you guys doing, and how are you managing this time dealing with the coronavirus and this pandemic?
I'll jump in first. I have to admit, I already do a lot of working from home. So it's a little bit of business as usual, but it's funny in my head, when it's not required that I work from home, it sounds like the greatest thing in the world. But even me, getting cooped up here for 10, 15, they say it's going to go on for another month or more. And now I'm starting to think, I like working from home, but I don't want someone to tell me to work from home. Now I feel like and now I want to go to the office just to get some perspective or stretch my legs. So coming from somebody who does it all the time, it's already I can feel it getting to me towards the end of the week every week.
Wow, a new energy drain outside of the normal. Man, so yeah, let's run with that. A couple of months. Let's think of a couple of months while we're dealing with this pandemic and this new situation and this new environment for working and getting things done. What do you think, Ken?
I mean, it's certainly a challenge. I think the thing that Zach was accounting on there is like the psychological effect of being trapped in your house. You know, I mean, I'm kind of like Zach. I do a lot of my work just on the phone. Working from home is a luxury that I'm allowed. And so for me, it's not that big of a change. I've had to build a little backyard playground for my son so that my wife stays sane, so she doesn't have the 3 or 4 year old climbing over everything in the house all day long.
Super dad.
There, thank you. And it is tough on a lot of employees. I mean, you know, it's going to be interesting for the world because I think there's going to be a big. You know, I think there's going to be a number of workers who never go back to the office, and they're just going to enjoy it and be a better fit for them. I think the technologies are all being developed extremely fast. I mean, we've seen new services, new technology offerings just pop up out of nowhere, trying to service the new needs we have. You know, I know my wife is doing. There's like this new little web service that's kind of like, you know, Zoom and Ring Central, but it's focused on social stuff. And you know, she got all of her girlfriends together, and they had a girls' night on the iPad, and it was video chat plus trivia games and stuff like that were just part of the system to have these social interactions. You know, our production manager told me that he's been having kind of Friendsgiving type dinners over Skype with his friends, and that's been good. You know, we have 2/3 of our employees working from home right now. Since we produce physical products, we do have an essential crew that is being very careful and adhering to the social distancing rules, and you know, circulating in and out of the shop only as needed to keep, you know, building drilling tools. And we're working really, really hard to make sure that the 2/3 of our employees that are working from home are adjusting well and getting the support they need. And you know, we have all sorts of things going, like the Slack chat. We've updated our schedule so that we have a weekly company update meeting and keep everybody in the loop of what's going on. And one of the things we're going to start trying next week is just 1 day a week having lunch together over Zoom, right? And seeing how that goes.
Wow.
And so it's definitely an interesting time. I mean, there's positive and negative things about this. I mean, the negative thing is that we do have, you know, permanent economic destruction going on every day that this goes on. And so that, you know, it is in everyone's best interest to get this thing under control as far as the economy is concerned. And then the loss of human life is staggering and absolutely terrible. But, you know, the thing that gives me optimism here is that I feel like we have, you know, every world government, every executive team of every company, everyone individually in the world, most people in the world with a vested interest of getting this planet back on track and healthy, both from a human perspective as well as economically. And to me, that is just an absurd amount of human ingenuity all working in the right direction.
Now let's focus on, or switch gears to oil and gas, the price of that, just for a couple of minutes, and we'll end this thing. Like, where do you guys see, from your perspective, the price of oil in the near-term future and potentially in the long term? I have friends that are going, man, we're not even going to have oil and gas after we come out of this pandemic. It's going to be the transformation of energies happening, and it's going to be this solar outbreak of the energy or wind, and all this other stuff's going to take over. And then I have people that are like, man, this is just a sneeze. At the same time, we had this pandemic, and it's coming back, and we got to get back to getting this efficient energy out of the ground and get things moving forward. Where are you guys at on this?
Personally, I'm a huge believer in oil and gas. Our civilization going forward is going to need an absurd amount of oil and gas. Oil and gas demand is almost directly correlated to the population. Our population is going nowhere but up, and you can't put a rocket into space without oil and gas, right? It's just not going to happen. And so, you know, while I'm a big fan of alternative technologies as well, you know, we're going to have an expanding population and expanding oil and gas needs. And it's going to just play such a pivotal role in our society. So going away, I don't think so. Where the production is might shift. Who's producing it might shift. That's just, you know, kind of world economics. But I think that, Mr. Trump is very tuned into the fact that it is keenly within the U.S. vested best interest to maintain a strong energy industry. And so that gives me some optimism. And then, just the good old American spirit and ingenuity. I mean, we're not going to let this thing fade away. I think it is our responsibility to keep evolving and being more efficient in improving our ability to produce barrels of oil such that we're the ones that can produce it at the lowest cost.
Right.
Boy, I hate to follow up an answer like that. For me, I see some short-term hope in price of gas and extracting that in the short term with the oil market the way it is through COVID and all this other stuff.
Right on. So let's begin the conception part of the show. And we got to start it with this image from, I'm not sure which year. Ken, what year is this?
Oh, God. That is probably, okay. I can't, we get in trouble if I try and do math on the air. That's 2009. So Abe and I are the original partners of the company. We got started. It was my idea. I dragged him into it. He's been stuck with me ever since. His brother is a lot more public than he is. So his brother joined us a few years later, and but Abe and I made a deal early on, and we said, okay, we're going to do the company together. Abe was going to kind of lead us technologically, and then I was going to try and figure out all the business stuff as I went. But his part of his deal was like he didn't want to have to talk to people. So there you go. It worked out. So he just gets to hang out in his office and build cool tech, and then I talk to all the clients, and so does Zach helps me out there. So that's how that worked out.
Wow. And so 2009, this photo was taken. So the company's obviously funded. It's ready to go. You guys are kicking out tech and running a business. But how did it get to this point? I mean, you got through a college degree, master's, PhD, bachelor's degree. What is this?
Okay. Well, you're going to expose me here. I personally don't have a degree.
Nice.
I got through 5 years of college, and then I started the company, and I went, the company's way more interesting, and I'm making more money, so I'm going to go do that, right?
Yep.
Just a lesson for all you kids out there. The penalty for that is many late night nightmares of getting called out for not having a degree or going back and failing some exam. So there is a penalty for that. But yeah, so I mean, Abe and I were working together. We actually met at a small oil field company called Teledrill, and they were building a pretty cool NWD system back in the day, circa 2008, 2009. And I was a crazy person, and I flew to California on a whim and met some people that were into entrepreneurship and starting companies and all this kind of stuff on a whim. And I was flying out there, and I was like, half my thought was like, okay, this is either going to be really cool or I'm going to get like murdered and chopped up, right? Because I'm just flying to California to meet people I've never met before. Anyways, and so we met a lot of people out there, and I met two really cool clients out there. One of them, you can see the kind of the invention we made for these guys in Abe and I's hands. This was 2009, and we made a cell phone controlled door lock, and that's what you see we're holding there. So Abe's holding the base station, which had a short range modem, and it had a cell modem in it, and then I'm holding the actual door lock portion of it. And so even back then, in 2009, we were building a system to where you could open your front door, with your cell phone, right? And that was one of our first projects we built. And then, hey, I just happened to be playing, pool in the right bar. And I just, played pool with some random guy, and we started chatting, and he was trying to build some car parts, and he knew how to do all the mechanical stuff, and he did some of the electronics. And I was like, hey, we can do that. And so I came back from California with a couple, projects, and, we were still doing our day job, and Abe and I, started working on the projects in the evening. We did that. We basically would go to work from 9 to 5, and then drive to my parents' house and work, from 6 till midnight. We did that for about 6 weeks straight and said, oh my God, this is exhausting. And so we asked our existing company that we were working for to spin off and keep them on as a contract. And they said yes. And they said, yes, we're not paying you $1 more. Like your consulting rate is going to be the same thing as your salary. And we go, okay, that's a fair deal, and we spun off. And We at that point we had three gigs and full time work, and we could get a little office space, and that's how we got started.
Whoa! So to me, that was very fascinating, because the notes I took was, what a time right now that people are sitting and forced to be sitting and thinking about, all right, what happens after this time that we're in, this transition of time, this wild time that we're being forced to sit and really think about what's going on. What are we doing for the rest of our lives? And you went out and created. You're a creator, man. You should be on Patreon teaching people how to create these opportunities, because for some reason you've been given this gift where you could hear a conversation over a pool game and see the value instantly that the person in his garage is making this component or whatever. And you're going, yeah, let's make a business about that. And you go out and do that. That is not, to me, common. And so that speaks volumes to ErdosMiller and how you guys really were able to do this. That picture, I had no idea that picture was going to be, you were going to be telling me that you were one of the first creators of the cell phone walking up, unlocking the door technology. I remember going to CES in 2013, I think it was, or 2014. And that was like new tech. I mean, the people were walking around like, buy my lock, and they got like a whole wall of locks at CES. And I mean, you guys built the internal parts to that, the components to that in 2009?
Yeah, I mean, we absolutely did. We've joked about this several times over the years. It's like, oh, gee whiz, maybe we should have said, we love oil and gas. We like building drilling tools. So that's where we kind of practiced when we came back to Texas. So we've joked several times. It's like, okay, maybe we should have stayed in California and built smart home stuff. Maybe we would have been one of those billion-dollar companies, doing that.
That was a huge part of CES for sure. The smart home section was like one whole casino in Vegas. Yeah, I could see that. So, okay, you're setting it up. Unbelievable story that gets you funneled into building upstream oil and gas components for the drilling. Where does Zach come in? How does this? So this starts. You guys start figuring this out. You're putting this together. Zach comes in when?
Oh gosh, Zach, what year did you join?
I joined in 2015. So
okay.
So just a little bit about my background. I am an electrical guy myself as well. But actually, I joined ErdosMiller straight out of school. So although I'm electrical, I have a passion for like talking and listening to people. It's like communications. I'm not the type of engineer that likes to, go into a corner and come out when the job's done. I need a little bit more social interaction than that. And ErdosMiller was looking for like a sales engineer at the time, and I was like, hey, let me give this gig a shot. It was a small to middle-sized business, and that was really what I wanted to do. I wanted to be somewhere where I felt like my impact could be felt around the organization, and that's exactly what I got. Although I did join in 2015, right as that nice 2014 barrel price was on its way down, hitting the bottom down in 2016. So when I first started, I started to kind of kick myself a little bit, thinking like, I'm either the worst sales guy in the history of sales, or there's something to this oil price that's getting everybody into these bad moods. So I was glad we pulled out of it, but here we are the second time, and at least now I know what to expect.
Dude, that's awesome, man. So what school did you come out of, and then did ErdosMiller have some kind of recruiting deal at that school, or how did you find them?
I came out of Texas A&M, and actually they didn't have a big recruiting presence. What they had though was they were funding a senior project there, and in fact it was for a gamma tool for MWD that they were funding to have some engineers develop or do a little bit of research on. And so I had heard the name, and to be honest, I didn't even remember where I heard it. But when I saw it again, when I was looking for jobs, I was like, I don't know why I know this place, but that name sounds familiar. Let me check them out. And it's funny that it ties into this podcast, even because we've got, gamma is one of our subjects here. So
right. I was just about to go back to Ken. Yeah, and how the heck did you infiltrate into the Aggie school, Ken and ErdosMiller? How did you guys do that? And then also, what was the vision behind the project? You guys are funneling money into a program. You know, you have grad students that are, you know, hung over on coffee and and managing grad school and school and everything. You're saying, here, this is a project. We're hoping to get something out of this. What was that? What was the idea that went into doing that?
Yeah. I don't know how we got an A&M. I'm going to assume we can thank Mr. Conger for that, because I went to U of H, right? So I'm a Cougar, and so Chris is our kind of president, COO, if you will, and so I assumed all the connections to the Aggie land came from him. Hey, I mean, if you want to put it kind of bleakly, a very capitalist way, you know, I mean, the college kids work for very little money and work really hard on building something cool, right? So, I'm kidding, but you know, we were playing around with trying to bring a more rugged sensor to the market on the gamma side of things, and it was a research initiative, and you know, we paired up with the students, and you know, it helped a lot to have some extra muscle, because we were a pretty small company at the time, and having, you know, some extra hands around to try and get things moving was a huge help, right? So that sensor ultimately didn't work out, but you know, part of inventing things is figuring out, you know, 100 ways things don't work until you figure out the one that does, right?
Yeah, man, that's right. Just like, that's geology world for sure. Wow, that's really, really cool, man. So you guys got to kind of see Zach work a little bit. At the same time, he obviously had a intuitive attraction to what this was doing and where the company was kind of trying to go with this. So I mean, what a perfect fit. That's a success story in itself.
Yeah, the story that Zach doesn't like me to tell is that I probably suggested that because I wasn't Zach's direct boss. I think Chris was, and I think I suggested to Chris that, you know, Zach. Let me just say Zach is, you know, as a salesperson, has a trophy on his desk for the biggest deals ever closed. So he's been a phenomenal impact to the company, and he's just like, you know, total MVP. But I think in the first 18 months of his employment, I think I suggested his boss to fire him like no less than 3 or 4 times because he wasn't getting, you know, his stuff done. But
it is very true.
You know, but and I don't, you know, I don't mind being proven wrong. I'm often happy to be proved wrong, and he proved me completely wrong. So you know, rub it in my face. There you go.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Okay, so the technology, the gamma ray, yeah. So that certainly was and is a huge contribution to figuring out the subsurface and what we drill into, and trying to find and recover the most amount of hydrocarbons possible, landing the well in the right spot, putting the perfs in the right spot is a huge undertaking in itself. Where are you exactly? Where did those response come from exactly? That's a fascinating subject. What we started putting wireline, the Schlumberger brothers did wireline, what, since like 1910 or something? I mean, they were throwing some kind of, you know, geophysical tool down hole and trying to figure out, you know, these correlations between wells and what the heck was happening. So it's been an amazing tool from our perspective. It probably just got totally overworked, and now we're really figuring out what the hell is this rock.
And there's so much more we could learn, right? But I think the Schlumberger brothers, the first thing they built was a wireline electrical resistivity tool, right? And this was 1926, 1927, and I remember they were extremely secretive about how it worked, because it was a big deal at the time to be able to know what the geology is like and where the reservoir might be and what the contents are. And so, yeah, that's the first ever electronic well logging instrument is I think is the Schlumberger wireline resistivity.
Wow, 1926.
So we're getting close to 100 years of resistivity.
Whoa. Measuring the salinity of the fluid, essentially, right? Resistivity. Wow. So the back to the gamma ray real quick. So you noticed, or somebody noticed at ErdosMiller, that there was something missing in our ability to capture a reliable gamma ray reading, or was there problems with the signal coming back to surface? What was it that you guys were really trying to unlock in that gamma ray technology in 2015?
Well, and that's something we're still kind of working on today. I mean, gamma rays are extremely difficult to detect. They require extremely sensitive instruments. And, you know, you basically have, you know, 3 parts to a gamma instrument. There's what's called a crystal, and then there's what's called a photomultiplier tube. and then there's a circuit board that drives the whole thing. So those are the three parts. And that the photomultiplier tube in particular is, it's built on like 1940s, 1950s vacuum tube technology, right? So the fundamental technology basis is really old, right? And it's a pretty sensitive instrument. I mean, if you talk to like a guitar player and you've ever seen like a tube amp and all the tubes kind of glowing behind the mesh of a guitar amp, I mean, that's kind of the same thing. It's glass, right?
Wow.
But that is the technology that to this day still gets the job done at high temperature while drilling, right? There's a lot of desire to find a more reliable technology. That's just been very difficult to do. And so we're still kind of searching for that today. The one thing our group has been able to push forward in the market is that we believe really heavily in geosteering. And, if you're going to take the time to drill a well, it's really expensive. I really don't believe in the necessarily, drill as many laterals as fast as you can. Who cares where they're positioned, whatever else. I mean, if you take just a little bit more time and you make sure you're staying right in the sweet spot of the production zone, you're looking above, looking below, drilling through there and really optimizing your production. And what we're trying to get at the end of the day is oil, right? So, the extra measurements, as long as you get the extra barrels to compensate for it, makes sense. And so we've been a big fan of the azimuthal gamma technology. And what we worked really hard to do, and we're very proud of, providing a commercial tool to do this today, is azimuthal gamma was a measurement that the Schlumberger brothers have had for quite a long time, but that technology wasn't really approachable by the broader shale industry because the tools that were able to produce that measurement, were very expensive, very large instruments still, and so we worked really hard to miniaturize the entire assembly and reduce the price point to where your economic, every day, every well NWD systems can now be equipped with that measurement.
Man, that's an accomplishment. So just real quick recap how ErdosMiller starts in 2009, door lock technology with cell phones to something with cars, then something to oil and gas, or how does to this point, how did that go?
Well, so I really, just backing up a little further, I personally really struggled in college. Believe it or not, I actually entered college as an art major in the liberal arts college. I used to do a lot of Photoshop and, 3ds Max and graphic design and stuff like that. I wound up getting an internship at Texas Instruments, and they were like, no, you really want to be an engineer. Come with us. We'll teach you all about engineering. And I learned a lot from them, and they kind of convinced me to switch my major over. And that was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed computers and programming and circuit boards and all this kind of stuff. But I didn't really feel like I found a calling per se, even though I really knew I liked technology. And so, when I joined Teledrill, which was a small NWD outfit, that was a big discovery for me because I really realized that, building measurement while drilling systems was just a ridiculous amount of fun for me. What's interesting about building an NVD system is that I feel like it's about as hard as launching a satellite, right? It's, you have all the kind of things, you have wireless systems sending data back, you have power systems and processors and sensors, blah, blah. And, I often say we have all the requirements of space with none of the budget, right? We're not spending $1 billion to make an NWD system. It's like, okay, here's a couple $100,000, here's $1 million, go do what you can do. And so, and also one of the things I really appreciate about our part of the industry is there's very little red tape. I don't have to go get an NWD system certified by, the equivalent of like the Food and Drug Administration or something like you would in medical, right? And so, NWD spoke to me. It was a ton of fun. When I first got into the industry, my first task was building the decoding system. And, I remember being in the Barnett Shale in Fort Worth on a rig the first time we got a system working. And it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. And we had this system that was, miles underground in the lateral. And it's sending up the pulses. And my software was decoding the pulses. And it's like, wow, that's awesome. That's just really cool that we built this device. It's miles away from us underground. It's sending us this information. We're, decoding that information on surface. And even though the data rate is jokingly slow, abysmally slow, 1 bit per second or whatever, it's still freaking cool. I love telling people that aren't in oil and gas that we literally send data in the mud. Half of them don't believe me, It's just it's a really fun kind of system to build.
That's pretty good, man.
But, to answer your question, how did we get from where we started? So, the first few years of the company, we did a lot of projects, right? We would do, kind of contract engineering, kind of for hire engineering. So that the door lock and the automotive parts and all that kind of stuff. We did some medical devices. We did a lot of oil and gas technology. And that's how we kind of grew our team and kind of like, if you will, kind of grew our chops and our expertise and learned a lot along the way there. But, one of the things that we did start experimenting with in the evenings was, MEMS sensor technology. Prior to the MEMS technology coming to the market, there'd only been one major technological shift in drilling sensors. And these are the sensors that are used for actually telling you the position of the well bore. If you go way back in time, you're looking at like all the glass bottle, kind of single shot, multi-shot, photo method with the plumb bobs and all those kind of, basic directional instruments, for the really early gyros. And then in the 80s, that actually got supplanted by the ICBM technology. So we took sensors that were magnetometers and accelerometers that were made for the missile program, and put them into measurement while drilling devices. And I didn't, because I was tiny or not around. But I'm talking about the industry at large, right? And so we started drilling with all this ICBM technology, which was super advanced, super accurate, really allowed us to do directional, true directional drilling, true measurement while drilling. That was where you kind of see the earliest NWD tools. And then in the, in the mid kind of 2010s, the MEMS technology, which stands for, I'll look it up, but it's basically the same kind of technology that you use to build a silicon processor, right? So, the ICBM technology was kind of handmade, machined, still very precise, but it's made it like a human scale, right? So you can kind of build it with your fingers. And MEMS stands for micro electromechanical system. And so what we're doing now is, using the same kind of technologies that allow us to make an Intel processor, and repurposing that to build incredibly small sensors, right? Just like, thumbnail, smaller than that size sensors, right? And these are all the sensors that power your modern cars, and with all their ABS and airbag and radio systems, and your iPhone, your iPhone has a built-in magnetometer, accelerometer, and gyroscope, and those are all based upon MEMS technology. And so we started messing around with our own time on our R&D, building directional sensors out of the MEMS technology, and those sensors are now, supplanting the market, right? So that's another big technological shift now in the drilling sensing technology that we're really leading there.
Sounds like it. Definitely sounds like it. So what was coming through my mind at the end of that was Trump. So President Trump, if you're listening, we have ErdosMiller that could totally put the right technology and the right components on whatever NASA plans to put on the moon to mine this thing, right?
You're like, you're kind of joking, but you're also like, you're talking about my 50, 60, 70 year vision is that, I want our company to be the premier, major operator, major service company, mining asteroids in the moon and all that kind of stuff. I want to make drilling tools that operate in space. This is going to be awesome. Like, I'm not even kidding,
Dude, I heard it.
was super excited when that article came out,
Dude, I heard it, man.
Yeah, look at that, Ken. April 8th. That's what, yesterday?
That is.
Yeah.
He officially said it.
Nothing could be better for space than finding a valuable, mineral or resource on the moon, and everybody working really hard to get there. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, dude.
It looks like, Ken, you might have to bring in that 30, 50-year timeline because they're looking for 2024.
Great. I thought they were further out when I was talking about it. I mean, I'm ready to go now. I'm glad it's going to happen when I'm alive as opposed to when I'm probably retired or dead.
Dude, no, this is happening soon. Well, at least the idea, I think, of putting the right components on something that I'm sure has to be really small, really lightweight, and very durable to get up there. And then when it's up there, how is it communicating? How is it delivering the information, the data? What the heck? We'll do the geology part. We'll tell you start drilling into the moon. We'll be like, okay, you hit some serpentinite. There's some interesting things going on here. You can see it in the gamma ray. I don't know. But this is,
I mean, if we're drilling for resources on celestial bodies and the moon or asteroids or Titan, I mean, yeah, they're interstellar, but rocks are rocks.
That's right.
So a lot of the technology that we've developed here for terrestrial oil and gas operations is going to be repurposable and usable in space for boring operations. Now, there's a big navigational difference, though, because most of the surveying we do here in the U.S. And worldwide, on Earth, we actually use magnetometers for, right? So we have a compass that's pointing north, right? If we start drilling on the moon or the Mars, for instance, that's not an option because they don't have a magnetic field. Those bodies don't have a magnetic field, and so north-seeking gyroscopes are going to be the only option for navigation. Wow,
look at that! You're already 10 years ahead of where these guys are. I'm sure they're sitting around going, "Okay, we got this," and no one's even thought of that. There's no magnetic field. How do you know you're going north, south, east, west? Wow. Well, that's going to be fun to watch take place. I would assume that also just as exciting is mining our oceans. I mean, we're barely getting that understood, and it seems to be an unbelievable amount of resources in our oceans, and building the technology to de-risk chasing resources in the ocean is certainly somewhat of a start. I think that's just as mysterious as the moon or another planet is getting down there and actually having the equipment that can pull this off too. So, well, that's cool, man. I mean, yeah, let's get started. Let's call President Trump. I'll tweet him after this show. I'm going to tweet him and say, dude, listen, you got a bunch of, I don't trust whoever you have in place. Guys. Yeah. I don't trust whoever you have in place. The only people that are qualified to do this, in my humble opinion, ErdosMiller.
Well, I appreciate that.
It's awesome, man. That was really, really cool. Definitely really cool. Just one question, I guess, to end up the conception part of this show is major challenges or things that you did not see coming, something that, if you could go back and talk, or if you could talk to somebody who's like 10 years behind you, is there some kind of universal issue?
Yeah, this is where the English language ends up being kind of limited. It's hard to describe it in actual words. I'm not sure that I would actually tell 10-year younger me or anybody, anything different. They say it's going to be the hardest thing you ever do. That's the understatement of the century. And if I told a younger me all the trials we went through to get to where we are, I'm concerned I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have gone down that path. So I don't know. I would say go for it and just be prepared to handle things as they come.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
And yeah, question for Zach, dude. So you show up in 2015 and you start to get to know Ken and Abraham. I mean, everybody that's involved in really running this business and this vision and being transparent enough with their employees to understand what vision and what you're being a part of and what keeps you, coming back to work and motivated. What was it about Ken, or what do you have to say about management at ErdosMiller and how they got through those trials and tribulations and got to this point where we're now breaking through into a whole nother world? It could be. What do you got, Zach?
Ken has a lot of energy, and when he puts his mind to something, I feel like even with anyone else dragging against him, he could probably still get it across the finish line. And so even when the market went down in 15 and 16, you could still feel Ken's energy pulling us forward, saying, it's the next thing. And it was always these steps that we were taking to just move forward, one foot in front of the other. And so I think it was that just, I've never seen someone with that much energy 24/7, for years. I mean, he's still got tons of energy over there. So it's hard not to gravitate towards it. It happens in meetings all the time. I mean, you can go into just what would normally be a normal business meeting, right? And then Ken enters the room and all of a sudden energy's back in the room and everyone's fired up about whatever. It doesn't even matter. It could be what we're ordering as coffee. I mean, he'll find a way to get everyone passionate about it.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. I hear that a lot about good Good leadership. That's it. That's it. He's got a way to get everybody on board, and you just believe, man. And what an incredible opportunity, dude, for you. And now ErdosMiller's pushing through. I think that's really cool, man. I think that was a great way to end the conception part of the show, unless you guys have anything on top of that before we take a quick break and drill down into something. So we'll start with the technology of MWD and directional drilling, and we'll go into company history as well, following these breakthroughs in technology and responding to them, the needs of the operators, the needs of finding efficient energy, and the response to the service companies, and response from our technical folks from around the world. So Ken, appreciate you walking us through this. Take it away.
Well, disclaimer here, I'm still relatively young, so I'm reenacting history I was not a personal part of, so hopefully there'll be some forgiveness there. But first off, do you Troy, we explained to you the difference between the M letter NWD and the L letter LWD?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay,
so NWD is specifically measuring while drilling. That only concerns the position of the wellbore. Okay, not what has nothing to do with what rocks are down there. Just where do we start? Where do we go as we drill along? Just what does this wellbore look like? That's where NWD comes in, right? It has nothing to do with rocks, right? And so the measurements that are part of NWD is inclination and azimuth and tool face, right? All right. Earlier we talked about logging while drilling, and that was with Schlumberger early on with the first wireline logs, right? So for the longest time, those those logging tools were restricted to use on wireline. And the engineers at Schlumberger and all the other companies just came up with awesome, really clever ways to categorize the rocks that are down there. I mean, the amount of tools and measurements that are available on the wireline side of things are incredible. Just, the neutron density, the calipers, the gamma ray tools, you just get so much information. It's incredible. So that's the big distinction between the M and the L. The NWD, measuring while drilling, position of the borehole, what the borehole shape is. LWD, what's the rock actually look like? What's in the formation? That's the measurements are what separates that, right? But the problem with wireline tools is, we have to stop drilling to run those in there, right? And obviously keeping the rig engaged and running wireline tools, it's a very expensive operation, lots of NPT, and ideally, we'd really rather have those measurements while we drill as we cut through the rock, and not after, right? And so we started building LWD tools, with gamma and resistivity, piggybacking those on top of an NWD system so that we could take those geological measurements and produce them in real time so we could make, decisions as we drill.
Yeah, that makes good sense. The only question I would have real quick is that how much difficulty, I guess, was it integrating the two when we realized, okay, we have the MWD, it's doing well, it's telling us what's going on and where we are and where the drill bit is and how we can reinterpret the hole we're making, but we need to be logging while doing this too. So what did that do with industry in regards to, okay, how much redesign of this whole thing to get gamma ray resistivity or whatever else we can add to the drilling, the logging while drilling?
It is absurdly complicated to transfer a tool from wireline to NWD, LWD systems. Wow. One issue is the wireline systems are not designed to be used while drilling. They are gently lowered into a borehole and gently retrieved on a wireline. So there's no real shock and vibration or any sort of drilling effects or spinning or whatever else. They are often high temperature tools, but the nice thing about a wireline tool is it's only in the ground for a few hours. And so when it's in the ground for a few hours, you're able to use like a heat flask or a heat shield technology to where you can actually insulate and deflect the heat for a few hours to keep the internal electronics cool. So your high temperature requirements are not as much, right? And also, there's no real flow of the drilling fluid, right? So I don't have to build something that drilling fluid can flow through or around. I'm in the fluid, I'm making the measurement, but I'm moving through it. And so between having to ruggedize the electronics and make them tolerant of the drilling shock and vibrations, having to package them in a form factor to where they can be, flowed past and made part of a drilling BHA, and then having to redesign those electronics to operate at very high ambient temperatures for very long periods of time. It is a lot of work, complete redesign. The fundamental principles, scientific principles of the measurements stay the same, but the tool itself is completely different, right? And so the answer to your question is, it is a lot of work.
Wow.
Yeah, I even have two more for you, Ken. One is switching from wireline to drilling. Now you have to consider power consumption. Where's your power source?
Yep. Totally.
So we're switching to batteries as we drill, right? We don't have a power source from surface, so we have to get a lot more creative with our power supplies and how we choose to operate those tools so that you can get, the same or similar quality measurements without ripping through 5, 6 sticks of batteries. And then the last one is actually, how the heck do you get that data back up to surface so you can act on it while you're drilling? There has to be a lot of creativity and challenging yourself as to, do I really need a gigabyte of data up to the surface, or can I make some decisions downhole and maybe just send up smaller bits of data? But yeah, those are two more challenges that I thought of there.
Absolutely. If we're on a wireline, I might have an effective bandwidth of 100,000 bits per second. It's a lot of data, right? I can just send up all the raw data. I can plot it on the surface for the geologists and the engineers to make a decision, and don't really have to think about what I'm sending. With NWD, the par for the course has been 1 bit per second, right? So 100,000 bits per second versus 1 bit per second. We're in a totally different ballpark, right? And so now I can't send up, just a ton of raw data. I have to either just find a very small averages or representations of variables to send up, or I have to actually build a little bit of intelligence into the tool where it can recognize a pattern and then tell me, okay, this pattern is happening because I have so little bandwidth, ability to send data in comparison.
Whoa. Okay, so I'm looking at the time.
Yeah, I like to say that if you tried to send an MP3 over the MudPulse data link, you would literally grow old waiting for it to happen.
Okay, I'm looking at the timeline, and MWD on the timeline I'm looking at falls just after 1980.
Yeah, so that's where the first real NWD systems existed. Prior to that, we're using methods where you're stopping the drilling, you're running a tool down on a slick line or a wire line. Like the earliest technologies, the acid bottle surveying, those would be run down on like kind of just a kind of a winch, kind of simple slick line. You'd you stop drilling, have a tool attached to the wire line, run that down to just behind the bit inside the pipe, let it take its measurement, pull it back up, and then look at what the measurement was, right? And that might take 40 minutes for that to happen. To 20 minutes to run it down, a couple minutes to take a shot, and then come back up. And then you see in the 60s we had magnetic steering tools, and those were getting closer to modern measurement while drilling tools. They had magnetometers and accelerometers. They were electronic based, but these were tools that required a wire while drilling, and they did not have a mud pulser to be able to send it up. And so those tools were getting closer to what we consider measurement while drilling today, but that technology was limited to shallow vertical wells, and you have the complication of the wire, and the wire doesn't go very deep. So the first true NWD systems, start appearing in the 80s. The big company that really had the corner of the market, were the first guys to have it out, and kind of legendary for doing so, was the guys at Teleco. And for the longest time, they had a great commercial position because they were the only ones offering a NWD system to the market. You can see them there in the 70s and 80s, and they did things before they built the NWD system. But I can't even imagine how nice it would be to be the only guy that can offer a solution to the market.
Whoa.
And of course, like once they proved it out and proved that it was viable to business, then you just have this huge competitive technology war starting with Schlumberger and Baker and whoever else. Just everybody, Baker buys Teleco. Everybody's filing tons of patents. They're building tons of tools. It's a huge market. It's a big rush. It's a new change in technology, and it is just like a commercial war, if you will, right? About who can develop the better tools, who can get those LWD tools over to, the wireline tools over to the NFD LWD side as fast as possible and get those to customers and win that business. And so you see just an explosion of patents and technology in the 80s and 90s with all this stuff going on, right?
Yeah, I can imagine, man. Wow, that's really, really cool.
We were talking a few minutes earlier about taking technology from wireline into NWD, LWD, and there is one company, and I think these guys were mostly operating in like the late 2000s, early 2010s independently, and then they were bought by Schlumberger, and this was a company called Throughbit, and they actually had a really cool system where they said, you know what, I'm not going to just take all these wireline tools and put them onto like a mud pulser and then do that. What they did is they actually made a special drill bit, and it had a hole in it, right? It had a removable plug in the middle of the drill bit. And what they could do was pause drilling for a second, and they'd pull up off bottom, maybe, 50 or 100 feet. And this huge string of wireline tools would come out of the bit and go out in formation, take measurements, and then they'd pull it back in, plug up the bit, and then go back to drilling. It was a really neat system. Yeah, so totally cool, right? So, but yeah. So from 80s on, we've got what we call modern NWD technology.
Real quick, if it's not too much of a rabbit hole, what is the mud pulse sending a signal? Like what are we talking about? Are you sending a signal through the mud? That's the drilling mud?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just that simple. So yeah, that's the primary method of communication even today. Down by the NWD system in the DHA, we have a valve that we can control with the electronics. And when I close the valve, it restricts the fluid flow. And when I release the valve, it releases the fluid flow. And when I restrict it quickly, it creates a pressure wave that travels to the surface. And if I just instrument the sandpipe at the rig with a pressure transducer and I record the pressure points in time, I can see these pressure waves as pulses coming to the surface. And if I control the timing of these pulses, I can then encode digital data into the mud as zeros and ones, right? And so the simplest example could be if I had just time slots, and if there's no pulse, it's a 0, and if there's a pulse there, it's a 1. And now I have digital data in drilling mud, right? And that is still the king of telemetry systems we use today.
That's kind of mind-blowing, not gonna lie. Kind of mind-blowing. Right on. Okay, so we're in the 80s, we're in the 90s, business is thriving, people are hiding and protecting their intellectual property of designing the best tools. And then quickly after this, or how long after this, I don't see it on this scale, it becomes obvious that we need to be logging while drilling and try to get some reservoir evaluation while drilling in real time.
Oh, pretty much immediately, right? So, I mean, you really, especially with conventional reservoirs, right, which everybody was still kind of drilling in the 80s and 90s, the demand for LWD on top of NWD was just huge. So almost as soon as you have NWD, you have, gamma ray and resistivity being the first LWD measurements, and then you get into triple combo and quad combo and all these things. But, when you're exploring these conventional reservoirs to be successful and really get into that, get that formation producing, you need these measurements to figure out where you're going in the formation. It's funny, it's like you actually need more technology to explore a conventional reservoir. Most people are getting by today in shale reservoirs just with a directional sensor and a gamma instrument, right? And we know the formations well enough, they're predictable enough, where drilling in the same formation, lateral after lateral after lateral, and we don't need as many sensors to get that done as you do when you drill in a conventional reservoir. Yeah.
Now that's we're certainly challenging the technical folks to understand that these black shales are not considered the reservoir. There's a reservoir within these black shales that the gamma ray is not exactly telling us. This is where we need to be establishing our perfs, and let's not waste any time putting completions away in the non-reservoir of a shale. So that's really, really interesting on where we're going to go with LWD with the unconventional play, because the unconventional concepts and models are being so disrupted with the recent lack of performance, if I can just put it bluntly, I think there's a ton of potential there for the right logging while drilling technology to be put in place. It's more than
you're talking about lack of performance by the operators,
right? Lack of performance of each of the individual wells, being overly economic and.
Yeah, well, the U.S. has been fascinated and run gamma ray as the primary LWD instrument for a long time. And if you look at, there's a strong argument that we should be running resistivity. But if you look at a gamma instrument, it's 12 inches long and it costs $10,000. Okay, if you look at a resistivity tool, it's 15 feet long and it costs $500,000. And so just that right there immediately shows you why the gamma instrument is more popular, right?
Right.
Is there an argument that you could be producing more oil with the bigger, more expensive tool? Yes, absolutely. But you got to go prove that.
And then sometimes we run logs in the horizontal well after drilling, and that brings back data like neutron density, and we start trying to calculate more of the reservoir properties from these instruments after drilling. But this is at the drill bit live. I mean, this is a fascinating, to me, really being on the front lines of this at the same time we're advancing our models and understanding in higher resolution where this oil is actually coming from, where this reservoir is. There's got to be, I think there could be another future rush in an LWD line of tools that really help an operator to see that, and it's certainly worth their time and money.
I totally agree, and I think we've been successful in kind of taking the azimuthal gamma measurement, which is more close to the size and the cost of resistivity, and minimizing that to where it's approachable for everybody, standard tools and shale plays. And I think that maybe we'll turn our attention to resistivity next, and miniaturizing and reducing the cost of that instrument to bring that to everybody as well.
Yeah, I think it's definitely not a waste of time on resistivity. Like we were kind of vaguely mentioning the non-super technical petrophysical definition of a resistivity log, but it's basically a salinity log. It's telling you what fresh water versus a salty or a dirty water, and that goes back to the Lewin paper we discussed kind of offline. So there's without question a relationship between the true reservoir of the shale and the resistivity log seeing that. But then there's another step we have to take, which is there's something going on in the brine. So in the dirty water, there are things floating around that we refer to as kerogen. And kerogen is a very, very unknown and not well described and understood solid state hydrocarbon on the planet. And when that stuff is in the brine, there's something else going on. And so it's happening at temperature, at pressure. And then we put fracs into it and we introduce more hydrogen through the frac fluid and the sand, the silica. I mean, there's so much happening geochemically in these actual reservoirs of the shale that it's not, there's definitely a good relationship, and petrophysicists will say, yeah, you got to have resistivity to maybe understand permeability and the salinity of the water. And there's cutoffs. They're like, okay, that's oil, that's a brine, that's fresh water. I think there's something. I'm certainly working on it and trying to push forward all the papers and understanding that I know of the unconventional approach. But I think there's definitely room and a future for this tool, for a resistivity log with specific either technology that's breaking out and better understanding the brine and the salinity of that reservoir at that time that you're drilling through it, or there's a complementary tool, maybe some kind of laser that can analyze the formation fluid coming out while drilling that might lead to some interesting discoveries in what's happening, because the formation's 200 plus million years old. And when we break it for the first time with that drill bit, we're depressurizing this thing and opening it up. And that's when Mother Nature that's how the rock was put in place in the first place. It had some in situ reservoir temperature and pressure as that formation was forming and being lithified. So when we go in there way later and we start breaking that rock and that fluid starts interacting with the fluid we're drilling with and everything else we're doing, man, there is definitely a reason to understand what the heck is going on. You can just simply look at it as like an energy thing. What happened at the drill bit in this reservoir, in that shale, we're drilling along, and then something distinct happened energy-wise with the system. And I listened to one of the shows that you guys did about dynamic, what was it called? Dynamic something while drilling, or what was that show called?
That was probably Mr. Gibson in dynamics while drilling.
Yes. And he was like, this is just an energy thing.
Yeah, I mean, Troy, what I was thinking the whole time you're thinking is like there are so many problems, I wouldn't say problems there. Problems to solve and optimize in this industry, right? Like I could spend the rest of my career on the NBD LW side making things better. There are just that many problems to solve there, and then everything you're talking about with the fluids that are in the formation, everything else. We just need so many brilliant minds to keep pushing this technology forward. And there's an evolving area of dynamics well drilling as well that's really focused on how the drill string is behaving and studying that and understanding that post well and in real time to get better efficiency for future wells where you can have a better BHA design, break up the rock more efficiently. I mean, there's so many challenges in getting the right fits and BHA drilling efficiently, and then getting the measurements while you're drilling, and then where to put your frac zones and what's going on and what fluids pump. Like this, the oil and gas industry, I think, is just replete with challenges for really smart people.
Well said. And we are. I think we're challenging. We're certainly coming up with new, just simply earth models, a new way of understanding how the rocks put themselves together and why they're there in the first place. Those models are going to lead to, I think, very disruptive and just leaps and bounds in advancement in technology. Like the way I see the oil and gas and the history of oil and gas, obviously driven by the prices and having an influence there, but there seems to be a science breakthrough, technological response, science breakthrough, technological response. An easy example is the horizontal end fracking. When we were able to pull that off, like the engineers and the ingenuity behind that happened a lot faster, light years ahead of our understanding of the reservoir laterally. So now all of a sudden we're going horizontal in these shales and we're seeing just this insane heterogeneity. And there's no geologist on the planet when we first started doing that going, that makes sense why we just crossed the silty zone or we hit that carbonate or now we're back in the black shale. Like it's insane. It was insanity that we were able to do that and then put the pressure on science to say, okay, so what's happening? Why? Where's the reservoir? Where's the oil coming from? Like that response is now. So we had that technological advancement, putting science up against the wall. We've challenged the unconventional model through our conventional understanding of reservoirs, pounding the unconventional model with a bunch of conventional ideas. Doesn't work, not working. Now we're responding. Science is responding to technology. And then guess what? It's going to happen again. Science is going to come back and say, here's what's going on. Technological advance happens. And I think that's just a kind of a natural way that we progress. I don't know.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And, it wouldn't be much of a challenge if we could mentally predict what is going to happen when we do something or drill a well or whatever else, and always be right. And so, when we build a new system and we're ready to go test it, one of the things I kind of joke about is like, okay, let's go see what physics has to say about it and how right or wrong we were.
That's awesome. I think that's the end of the drill down segment. I think that was a fascinating topic.
Well, our group has just a real passion for oil and gas drilling, right? And so, obviously, this is not a fun time in the market for anybody. This is a time of ridiculous change. Obviously a lot of economic issues. We are resilient. We're not going anywhere. This is our industry and we're really proud of it. We're proud to be here. And so a lot of our ambitions here, we'll be focusing on the next 3 to 5 years is, really improving the NWD and LWD systems we have. Troy, thank you for putting that image up. That's one of the recent achievements we had with one of our partner directional companies. I'm producing an azable gamma image with a independent NWD system. And this is just phenomenal data that is available to operators now that they used to have to go to a major and just pay so much more money for. And so that's going to be a lot of our big focus. We're going to be focusing a lot on, getting people out of the field and into the remote center, right? And giving them a lot more better tools to do that. So miniaturization of these existing systems and getting those costs down, and then getting people, off the rig when they don't have to be and into remote centers to do their job. That's going to be a big focus, creating technology for that. And then, we're really focused on telemetry, right? Like, even though it's 1 bit per second, hey, it'd be great if we had 2, 3, 4, 5 bits per second. So a lot of our time is going to go into that. We have a 10-year vision to just, we want, unabashedly, unashamedly, we want our products to dominate the industry, at least, and so we have a goal of getting 70% market share in the industry within 10 years. And so that's where we're going there. And on top of that, we love drilling technology. And so, in the next 10 years and beyond, we are going to be, working on, taking these same core skill sets and these same tools and applying them not just to oil and gas, but also to the HDD industry, which is the municipal, sometimes called river crossing drilling, which is a really cool industry where they're drilling for non-oil and gas purposes with almost the same tools to build things out. There's a lot of drilling in mining as well, terrestrial mining on Earth, where a lot of these tools can have a big benefit. And then, into the future, looking into space as well. And so our vision is that if you build a company that's building fantastic drilling tools for all these different industries, there's going to be a lot of lessons learned from space that we could bring to oil and gas, or oil and gas that we could bring to space, and vice versa, and just have the best tools for drilling across the board.
Awesome. That's really awesome. 70% of the market share of MWD technology and drilling, man. That's amazing. That's a hell of a vision, and I think after getting to know you guys a little bit more, you're certainly the ones that people need to be watching for. People need to be understanding what's going on and seeing where your breakthroughs are going to be and where your minds are at. I think the podcast might allow some insight on that. That's really, really cool. Really amazing. Do you have, it's just a random question, and we might not even put this on the show, but do you have some kind of investment responsibility as a company where they're like, here's money, and do what you need to be doing, break through, especially at a time right now when it's low and it's challenging. You need that a little extra R&D. You need that to break through and become the just overwhelming leader in the industry. I mean,
to date, and I'm fine being honest about this, and I'm fine having this on the show. To date, we've been completely bootstrapped. So, Abe and I started off, with no money. We just got a credit card, $2,000, bought a computer and some software licenses, and just started going. That was our investment. We've grown the entire company organically to date. We haven't had any investors. And one of the reasons we did that is, even though we're ambitious, I personally didn't feel like I had enough knowledge of the industry and the product to say, okay, Mr. Investor, if we build widget XYZ, we'll go and make this much money, and therefore I need this much investment. We've been to the industry for, over a decade now. We've had a lot of successes. We've had a lot of failures. We've had a lot of middle ground. And so I feel like we have a pretty, good sense for what to do, how to execute, what things are valuable, which things are not. And so now we feel like we have that confidence. And so we are considering taking on funding in the future to accelerate our growth in the different industries or with new products. But to date, we are, completely bootstrapped and completely organic out of our own cash flows, et cetera.
That is incredible, man. What an accomplishment in itself right there. Wow. It reminds me of a show we did with Steve Jumper, the CEO and president of Dawson Geophysical. He said, he learned it right away that you can't take on a bunch of debt. You just absolutely don't take on debt, and you can make it through these low times. So that, holy smokes, man, that's amazing. That really is. That's fascinating in itself, man. What an accomplishment.
And I'm a big fan of technology, but personally, I wouldn't be happy in an R&D lab, right? I wouldn't be happy just building things and like, I mean, there's like cool historical examples of like Bell Labs or whatever else where they're just, building all these earth-changing inventions that come out later. For me, technology can't just be an ivory tower thing. It's got to go out into the world. It's got to change somebody's life, change somebody's business. It's got to make a lot of revenue. It's got to impact the world in a significant way. And for me, the passion lies with when technology is commercially successful and does change the world. That's what I really am passionate about executing towards.
So at these times, and while we're going into this low, and people are saying maybe it's low for long and whatever, like, where are you spending most of your time and attention right now? Is it what is that? Better understanding the competition, better understanding the technical issues, the limitations? What is it?
In a time like this, we manage the company a little bit differently. We usually manage the company on a quarterly basis. In a time like this, we're really looking at a weekly or monthly basis because, especially right now, the world has changed dramatically in the last 8 weeks. It could change dramatically again in the next 8 weeks. And so you really just have to, in a time like this, put one foot in front of the other, like Zach said earlier, and just manage it day by day. You got to focus on the things that, are most valuable, but you also have to keep a look towards the future. And so we kind of believe in having a 80-20 balance. 80% of our focus is on what's making money right now and what keeps the company healthy and alive and profitable, and 20% on what's coming in the future, right? And I guarantee you, a lot of people, right now are like, okay, no, we just got to focus on nothing but what makes money. Forget about the future stuff. And I can't allow that to happen. That's not what we're going to do. And so we believe in continuing to invest even in a downturn like this.
Yeah, no, that makes good sense. It's awesome that you shared the insight there. I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people, understanding what you're saying, and it's kind of that idea of keeping your heads out of the weeds, seeing where your vision, where you're going, where the ship's sailing towards, and then getting back into those step-by-steps and getting through that. So what you spoke a little bit, and you touched a little bit about spreading out, not just oil and gas, but mining and drilling technology with these other things. What is that at ErdosMiller? Like you have clients and you have tools that are deployed in how many different industries? Is it thousands of tools? Is it hundreds of tools? Like, what does that actually look like?
We're primarily in oil and gas. With the pre-downturn volumes, it's hundreds of tools across hundreds of rigs. We are just getting started in other industries. That's a big push for us. So that's a new thing. But there's a big vision there to do a lot more.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, mining's coming back. Copper, gold, this stuff is that industry is definitely. I live in Tucson, and it's a big mining community. So, yeah, drilling new holes and making discoveries of major copper plays, and now critical minerals is becoming a huge subject. We need to get this stuff from our own ground, not rely on other countries for a lot of these critical minerals. So there's a lot to be had and developed in the future of exploring for those critical minerals. Yeah. And, man, so hundreds of tools across hundreds of rigs. Yeah. So is that the metric that you use to get a feel of how close are we to taking over 70% of the share of the industry?
Yeah. I mean, that is absolutely our goal to, have, one piece of our technology, surface equipment, downhole equipment, whatever, on 7 out of 10 rigs. That's the vision I'd love to see, where you can walk onto most rigs in the U.S. and there's something that we've built on that rig operating. And there's a lot of things that aren't that we've built that are not necessarily branded. We built them for a client or so and so forth. And we're getting closer to that goal every day. And honestly, there's a bunch of stuff out there that we built that you just wouldn't know.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, started with the conversation with technology of opening doors to your cell phone. You guys obviously have the ability to engineer your way into whatever niche becomes, I guess. This is, man, what an opportunity to speak to you guys and better understand the vision and what ErdosMiller is. I'm definitely a fan, and we'll be buying stock as soon as you guys become public.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
So we're looking at that screen, that image you sent over, Ken, and just kind of across the top. Can you explain what each of these curves are telling us, and then and maybe how this image is made?
Right. So on the best comparison here is you look on the left, look on the right. Right. On the left, you have your standard gamma ray trace, right? And so that's what for the last 10 years, most everyone's been looking at to determine formation tops and which formation they're in, and trying to place within the geological zone, right? And it's been my strong belief for years now that we could take that's your standard omnidirectional gamma ray image, right? And then on the right side, you have an azimuthal gamma ray image, right? And so the way these gamma detectors work is normally radiation can come from all around the sensor, right? It's not shielded. No matter which direction away from the sensor the radiation is coming from, it will detect it, right? And you want that when you have, are just trying to produce a standard gamma ray trace like what's on the left, right? And, if I probably just back up a little bit, all rocks are naturally radioactive. They've got a little bit of radioactivity coming off of them. One of our internal code names, I think, for that Gamma project at Texas A&M, I think it was called like the banana detector or something, right? We call it that because the rocks are about as radioactive as a banana. So when we say radioactivity, I think a lot of people get freaked out, but it's only as radioactive as a banana. So if you're okay being exposed to banana level radioactivity, the rocks are fine. But what we can do is if we take that sensor and we put what's called a shield on it, and this shield can block energy from all but one direction that we're trying to look. And we use a very dense metal like lead or tungsten to do that. Then we can look up, we can look down, we can look left, we can look right, and see the rocks that are all around us, right? And so what the NVD system does now is, instead of just collecting the information from all around, is as we are drilling ahead, as we are spinning that BHA, that gamma sensor is that shielded gamma sensor is coupled with high-speed, high-precision magnetometers, accelerometers, and gyroscopes, and we are tracking where we're looking as we spin, even up to 100 RPM or more, right? We can basically just think of it as like an eye or kind of a lighthouse thing, kind of spinning around and scanning that formation as we drill. And when we do that and we process that and we correlate where that's looking with the gamma rays that are coming in, we can now produce an azimuthal gamma image, right? And so if you look on the right, the very far right, that's a memory log, and that shows what the memory is recording on the tool, which is achieved by downloading the memory after the well's drilled or after the drilling run. If you look on the second from the right, that's the real-time image, right? And so we talked earlier about being limited on bandwidth and having to choose what we send up. And so what we do is we take data compression techniques and we compress that image so that we can get that up in real time. And so that's exactly a perfect example of the trade-off you're having to make between, what's typical on like a typical wireline tool and then what we can do in real time. But for this real-time image, we're able to send up while drilling and get that image to the surface for geologists to interpret and make a decision, right? And so, personally, I'm not a geologist. I'm learning more all the time on the rock side of things. But what you're really looking for here is they call them smiles and frowns, right? And so where your mouth is right now, that's a good example of a frown. And that kind of dark red kind of half ellipse there is kind of indicating that we're going from one geological layer to the other, right? And so previously they just had to look for the peak in the gamma trace, but now we can give them this wrapped image of like what the rock actually above and below looks like. And so that's just a major improvement in our ability to geosteer and place these laterals in shale formations.
Whoa. Yeah, what an interesting way to visualize the rock. Is this a horizontal well or a vertical well?
So there's actually a trace there called live inclination, which is represented by the dashed blue dots. And so the value goes from 0 to 100. So that value is right about 90. And so that shows you we were drilling through the lateral section of the well. And so that represents another big advance in technology because we're now able to calculate inclination even on the fly while the BHA is bouncing around and shocking and vibrating. We have algorithms that can average out the noise of that system and still get to a true inclination measurement, so we can measure the inclination on the fly. And so all this is produced while drilling right now. Wow.
And this well in particular has a gamma ray reading from specifically going from constantly being recording from what's coming from above and what's coming from below while that drill bit is pushing through the reservoir That's what the red and blue are. That's just looking up and down.
Right. And so if you look at the image on the right, you see TRBLT. That stands for top, right, bottom, left, and then top again, right? And so that represents, the borehole being, circular, and unwrapping that and looking at it as a strip, if you can imagine, just, cutting a circle of paper and then, laying it out flat. But the gamma ray up and down represent the top and the bottom, and presenting those curves as a top and bottom. In addition to the images, can help the geologist with interpretation.
When you wrap that?
Yeah, so that's when we, if you imagine your dip, that's when we're transitioning from one rock layer to the other, right? So you can imagine that if we kind of hit the formation at a shallow angle, you can imagine how that kind of curve is formed by going into or out of a particular formation, for steering. And so the idea here is that if we're able to look up and we're able to look down and left and right, we can, before we cross into that zone, and get out of a production zone, we can see that it's coming. We can make a decision to stay in it.
Wow.
And so, we had a client tell us, I think 2 days ago, that they think by 2021, most of their gamma logs that they produce are going to be azimuthal gamma image logs, and that's going to become kind of the standard for North America.
Nice, dude. That's really, really cool, because you guys are on the front lines of this, I would assume.
I absolutely. I think this is as far as bringing this measurement from the majors to the independents. Yeah, absolutely.
Nice, man. Wow. Yeah, this is certainly a very interesting way to visualize the horizontal well. To just kind of a new way of looking at the data and figuring it out. Man, that's awesome, dude. This is really, really cool, man. I think it's incredibly educational to better understanding what we're getting from these lateral wells, and then mixing that with a good geologist, a good structural geologist, and a good geochemist, with the cuttings that are coming back and how those relate to the gamma ray that now I'm thinking of all kinds of stuff that opened up, that scattered my mind a little bit, thinking of integrating all those data sets. But man, this is definitely looking into the future, I think. And that makes sense. Whoever made that prediction that 2021 is going to be a lot more of this, and seeing this in the horizontal wells, it feels like that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking into like a futuristic lateral log.
And the last thing I want to add is, we get the privilege of, working in our offices and building a lot of really cool tools and focusing on the electronics and the software and the firmware. But, I just can't extend enough thanks to our clients, which, are generally the directional drilling firms that, are the guys that go out there and spend their lives in the field, actually, running the tools and producing these measurements. We wouldn't be anywhere without them, and they're a huge part of what we do. So I can't take all the credit, and I'm extremely thankful to our clients for working together with us on all this.
Well, man, on behalf of all the PBE community, we can't thank you enough for sharing this time together and letting us ask questions and get to know more about ErdosMiller and where you guys are going in this future. We're fans, no question about it. We will be staying in touch. We will be following you, and I think the world is rooting for ErdosMiller after this show, and we certainly are. So thank you so much for your guys' time.
Thank you, Roy.
All right, take care, guys.